The fluorescent light of the examination room was too bright. It hummed, a high, thin sound that matched the tension in my nerves. I sat on the edge of the paper-covered table, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles were white. "Alistair, I'm not going to sugarcoat this," Dr. Desmond Hale said. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the chart in his hands, a thin tablet that held the story of my decline. "I prefer you didn't, Desmond," I said. My voice was thin, reedy. I hated how weak I sounded. Desmond had been one of my best students at Evergreen University. Now he was a leading cardiologist, and I was his patient. It was a reversal of roles I found deeply unsettling. "Your edema is worse," he said, finally meeting my gaze. His eyes were sharp, analytical. "The swelling in your ankles is significant. Your EKG is showing more frequent premature ventricular contractions. And your breathing. Alistair, you were short of breath walking from the waiting room." "It's been a bad week," I said, a weak defense. "It's been a bad 3 months," he countered, swiping a finger across the screen. "You had a severe myocardial infarction. We stented you. We put you on the maximum, most aggressive medical therapy. Digoxin, beta blockers, ACE inhibitors. The works." He leaned against the counter, his white coat pulling tight. "And what does your body do? It gets worse. It's not just not responding, Alistair. It's as if—" He trailed off, pinching the bridge of his nose. "As if what?" I pressed. "It's as if you're not taking anything at all," he said. The words hit me like a physical blow. This is the clinical presentation of a patient who is completely non-compliant, someone who isn't taking their pills. "I take every dose," I said, my voice rising. "I'm a doctor, Desmond. I know what's at stake. I haven't missed a single pill." "I believe you," he said, but his tone was troubled. "Which only leaves 2 possibilities. Either your body has developed some bizarre, unheard-of tolerance to every cardiac drug we have, or there's something wrong with the medication itself." "That's impossible," I said, but the seed was planted. "My son, Franklin, he picks them up for me. He's very careful. He organizes them in my weekly dispenser. Every dose, every day." Desmond nodded slowly. "I'm sure he is. But I want to do something. I'm writing you a new prescription for your digoxin. I don't want you to get it from your usual pharmacy. I want you to go to the Summit Crest Medical Center Pharmacy, right here in the hospital. Today. Start this new batch tonight." "You really think—" "I don't know what to think," Desmond interrupted, his voice firm. "But I'm a man of data. And the data says what you're taking isn't working. I want new data. Get the new pills. I'll see you in 48 hours. He scribbled on his pad, tore off the sheet, and handed it to me. "Don't tell Franklin. Just do it." I took the small piece of paper. It felt impossibly heavy. "All right, Desmond. 48 hours." I walked out of the clinic, my heart hammering an irregular, panicked rhythm against my ribs. A rhythm that told me, far more clearly than Desmond's EKG, that something was terribly wrong. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. I drove home to my Augusta condo, the prescription slip burning a hole in my pocket. Desmond's words echoed in my head. "As if you're not taking anything at all." It was absurd. Franklin, my son, had been a godsend since the heart attack. He'd stepped up, finally. He managed everything. "Rest, Dad," he'd said, his hand on my shoulder. "I'll handle the meds. I'll handle the bills. You just get better." After a lifetime of bailing him out of one failed business after another, after millions of dollars vanished into his next big thing, seeing him take responsibility, It had been a profound relief. I entered my quiet apartment. The view of the city skyline from my window, usually a comfort, now seemed distant and cold. I walked into my kitchen and looked at the blue plastic pill dispenser on the counter. The slot for Tuesday p.m. was open, the pills waiting. I was supposed to take them with dinner. Instead, I walked into my study. On a shelf, I kept the new, unopened boxes of medication Franklin had brought me just last week, a full 30-day supply. This is paranoia, I muttered to myself. I was a 71-year-old man with a bad heart. Confusion was a possible symptom. Desmond had put a crazy idea in my head. I picked up the box for my digoxin. The manufacturer's logo was correct. The dosage was correct. The lot number and expiration date were clearly printed. I ran my thumb over the sealed end of the small cardboard box, and I stopped. My fingers, trained by 45 years of surgical precision and delicate examinations, felt something. A microscopic ridge, a faint tackiness. I pulled my desk lamp closer, the bright LED light flooding the box. I tilted it. There, at the corner where the flap was glued down, I saw it. A tiny, almost invisible fiber, trapped in a trace amount of excess glue. My breath hitched. This wasn't a factory seal. A factory seal is perfect, automated, sterile. This was clumsy. This was done by hand. My heart began to pound, the familiar, terrifying arrhythmia that Desmond was trying to stop. I grabbed the next box, metoprolol. Same thing. A slight deformation on the tab, as if it had been pried open and pressed back into place. I fumbled with the box, tearing the tab. I shook the pills into my hand. They looked right. Small, white, perfectly pressed. But I knew what the real ones felt like. I rolled one between my thumb and forefinger. The texture was wrong, grittier. I brought it to my nose. Nothing. The faint, sharp, chemical smell of the beta blocker was missing. No, I whispered. The word was a prayer. No, it can't be. I swept the pills back into the box and went to the phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. Summit Crest Pharmacy, a voice answered. Jonas Calloway, I managed to say. Tell him it's Alistair Knight. It's an emergency. The hospital was quiet. It was 8 p.m., and the main shift had gone home. The pharmacy in the hospital's main atrium was dark, its metal grate pulled down. I used my old access code to get through the staff entrance, a privilege I probably shouldn't have had anymore. The lights in the main dispensary lab were on. Jonas Calloway was waiting for me, his white pharmacist's coat on, his face etched with worry. Alistair, you sounded terrible on the phone, he said, skipping the pleasantries. Jonas had been one of my brightest students, a protégé. He was a man of science, precise and incorruptible. I need you to do this off the books, Jonas, I said, my voice hoarse. No record, no questions. I'm calling in every favor I ever did for you as your mentor. His eyes widened. What's going on? I didn't answer. I just reached into my coat pocket and pulled out 3 plastic sandwich bags. I'd taken samples from all my key medications. Digoxin, metoprolol, and the ACE inhibitor. I placed them on his spotless steel counter. I need to know what's in these, not what the label says. What is in them, tonight? Jonas looked from the bags to my face. He saw the desperation, the fear. He was a pharmacist. He could see my physical symptoms. The slight tremor in my hands, the flush in my cheeks, the way my chest rose and fell just a bit too quickly. This is highly irregular, Alistair, he said softly. I know, I said. And I'm asking you anyway, as a friend. He stared at the bags for a long moment, the gears turning in his brilliant mind. He was calculating the risk to his job, his license. "My old mass spectrometer is still in the back lab," he finally said. "It's not networked. The logs are local." "Thank you, Jonas," I breathed, a wave of relief making me dizzy. I gripped the counter for support. "Don't thank me yet," he said, his face grim. He scooped up the bags. "Go to my office, drink some water. This will take at least an hour." I sat in his small, cluttered office, surrounded by pharmaceutical journals and pictures of his children. An hour passed. Then 2. Every tick of the clock on his wall was a hammer blow to my nerves. Was I insane? Was I destroying my relationship with my son, my only family, over a paranoid delusion? Then the door opened. Jonas stood in the doorway, but he wasn't holding a printout. He was pale, paler than any patient I'd seen that day. "Jonas?" "Alistair," he said, and his voice cracked. "You need to come with me." I followed him back into the sterile brightness of the lab. The mass spectrometer, a large beige box of humming machinery, had a computer monitor next to it. On the screen was a graph, a flat line. "I ran the digoxin first," Jonas said, his voice barely a whisper. "The sample, it didn't just have no active ingredient. It was pure placebo, starch, chalk, a little binding agent. I thought it was a mistake. A contaminated sample." He pointed to a second graph. "So I ran the metoprolol. Same result. Nothing. Not a single microgram of the active pharmaceutical." He turned to me, his eyes filled with a mixture of horror and disbelief. "Alastair, I analyzed every sample you gave me, 3 times. He hit a key, and a final chart filled the screen. A chemical breakdown. "They are all fake," he said, his voice flat with the terrible certainty. "Perfectly crafted placebos. The color is right. The weight is right. The press is professional. Someone with access to pharmaceutical-grade equipment made these." I felt the floor drop out from under me. My legs, already weak, gave way. I grabbed a lab stool and sank onto it, my head in my hands. "Who?" Jonas asked, his voice shaking with rage. "Who is doing this to you?" I couldn't speak. The name was a stone in my throat. "Franklin. My son. The boy I had taught to ride a bike. The man whose failed businesses I had funded, whose debts I had paid, whose excuses I had accepted for 20 years. As if you're not taking anything at all." Desmond's words were no longer a guess. They were a death sentence. And my own son was the executioner. "Alistair," Jonas said, kneeling in front of me, his hand on my arm. "You're in shock. We have to call the police." "No," I said, the word tearing from my throat. "No police. Not yet." I looked up, and the grief in my eyes had been replaced by something else. A cold, hard clarity, the same clarity I'd felt before a 12-hour surgery. "This is a betrayal," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "But it's also a medical problem, and a legal one." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to do what I've always done," I said, pushing myself to my feet. "I'm going to gather the evidence. I'm going to make a diagnosis, and then I'm going to cut the cancer out." Jonas handed me a sealed evidence bag containing the remnants of the pills. "The analysis is on this drive," he said, handing me a small USB stick. "The local logs on the spectrometer are wiped. As far as my lab is concerned, this never happened." "Thank you, Jonas," I said, gripping his shoulder. "You've done more than you know." "Be careful, Alistair," he said, his eyes pleading. "Whoever this is, they're not just negligent. They're actively trying to kill you." "I know," I said, walking out into the dark hospital corridor. And they're about to find out they made a terrible mistake. They underestimated me. The next morning, I was in a different kind of sterile office. This one was on the 50th floor of a downtown skyscraper, all polished mahogany and thick carpet, with a view of Augusta that screamed, expensive. Preston Shaw, my oldest friend, was not impressed. "Attempted murder," he said, his voice a low growl. He tossed the small USB drive from Jonas onto his desk. Plain and simple, and patricide to boot, the little bastard. Preston had been my friend since we were broke undergraduates at Evergreen. He'd gone into law, I'd gone into medicine, but we'd kept the same ruthless approach to problem solving. "Preston, I need to know what to do," I said. "Legally." "Legally?" Preston stood up and walked to the window, his massive frame blocking the morning sun. "Illegally, we call Raymond Groves at the DA's office and have Franklin arrested before lunch. We have forensic analysis of the pills. We have your testimony. We have Dr. Hale's testimony of your declining health." He turned back to me. But what? "But it's your word against his," Preston said, tapping his temple. "Franklin's lawyer, and with the money you've given him, he'll hire a good one. Will paint you as a grieving, confused old man. He'll say you messed up the pills. He'll say Jonas Calloway, your former student, faked the results for you. He'll create so much doubt, a jury will be hopelessly split." "He is trying to kill me," I whispered, the words still tasting like ash. "I know that, and you know that." Preston slammed his hand on the desk, making me jump. "But we have to prove it. We need motive. We need a chain of evidence. Right now, we have the what. We don't have the who or the why in a way that sticks." I closed my eyes and let the dam of my pride break. I told him everything. "It's the money, Preston," I said, my voice flat. "It's always been the money. I laid it all out. The first failed restaurant. The $80,000 I gave him. The construction company that cost me $120,000. The phantom tech startups and investment opportunities that followed. I lost count, Preston," I confessed. "Millions. Over 20 years. Every time he failed, I was there to write another check. To protect him from the consequences." "And your wife, Clarissa, she let this happen?" "Clarissa, she saw it," I said, a fresh wave of grief hitting me. "She told me, 'Alistair, you have to set limits.' But she was sick, and after she died, Franklin was all I had left." "So you enabled him," Preston said, not as a question. "I enabled him," I admitted, "until the heart attack. Then I had to stop. The medical bills, the care. I had to tell him the bank was closed. For the first time in his life, I said no." Preston nodded, a grim understanding dawning on his face. "And how long after you said no did your health start to decline?" I did the math. "About a month. He offered to help with the medications about a week after I cut him off." "There's our motive," Preston said, his voice cold. "He's not just trying to get the inheritance. He's impatient. He sees you as a bank account he can no longer withdraw from, so he's decided to close the account and take the balance." He sat down, all business now. "Here's what we do. The lab report is our foundation, but we need more. We need to tie him to the pills. We need to know where he gets them. And we need to get him to admit it." "He'll never admit it," I said. "Not to a cop," Preston said, a dangerous glint in his eye. "But to his dear old dad, who he thinks is getting sicker and more confused by the day, he might get arrogant. He might slip up." "What are you suggesting?" I'm suggesting you buy a very good, very small digital voice recorder, Preston said. I'm suggesting you invite your son to dinner, and I'm suggesting you get the bastard on tape. I bought the best recorder I could find. It was the size of my thumb, designed for discreet recordings. The irony made me sick. I was a doctor, a man of science and truth, and I was preparing to set a trap for my own son. I practiced with it for an hour, hiding it under a stack of coasters on my living room coffee table, the spot where Franklin always sat. The audio pickup was perfect. Then I made the call. Franklin, it's Dad. Hey, Dad, how are you feeling? His voice was a blend of forced cheerfulness and impatience, the voice of a man making a courtesy call. A little tired, son. But listen, I wanted to thank you for all your help with the medications. I'd be lost without you. I had to force the words out. Hey, no problem, Dad. That's what family is for, right? Right, I said. I'm making those ribs you love tonight. The slow-smoked ones. I've got a bottle of that 21-year-old scotch we've been saving. A little celebration. Just you and me. A beat of silence. He was probably calculating. A free, high-end meal and expensive booze. Yeah, Dad. That sounds great. I'll be there around 7, and I'll bring your refills for next week. Wonderful, son, I said. See you then. I hung up and stood in my kitchen, my hand shaking on the receiver. I was a 71-year-old man, a cardiac patient, playing spy. If I failed, if he suspected, I was dead. He arrived at 7:02 p.m., all smiles. He carried a small brown paper bag from the pharmacy. Hey, Dad, you look about the same, he said, giving me a one-armed hug. It felt like being embraced by a snake. Same old, I said, forcing a smile. Scotch? You know it. We sat in the living room. He took his usual chair. I set his drink on the coaster, right next to the hidden recorder. I clicked record on the small remote in my pocket. So, I started, keeping my voice light. To your health, Dad. And to yours, son, I said, raising my glass. We drank. These ribs smell incredible, he said, leaning back, relaxed. You're the best, Dad. Just want to make sure you're well fed, I said. You're doing so much for me. All those trips to the pharmacy. It must be a hassle. Nah, it's fine, he said, taking a big gulp of scotch. It's just, these medications are so expensive, I said, feigning an old man's worry. I was looking at the EOBs from the insurance. They're astronomical. I hope you're using the coupons I gave you. Franklin's smile tightened just a fraction. Yeah, of course, Dad. It's just, with all these expenses, I was talking to my accountant. He said I need receipts for everything, for the tax deductions. You've been saving the receipts, right? He froze, his glass halfway to his lips. Receipts? Dad, I don't know. I just pay and go. It's a hassle. But Franklin, we're talking thousands of dollars. We have to have the receipts for the IRS. Medical expenses, you know. He got defensive. His voice rose. Dad, why are you grilling me about this? I'm running around, taking care of you, and you're worried about a few pieces of paper? I held up my hands, playing the part of the confused father. I'm not grilling you, son. I'm just concerned. These drugs, how much are we really spending? He exploded. It was sudden and violent. A fortune, he snapped, slamming his glass on the table. The scotch sloshed onto the coasters. They're expensive. Every single month, I spend a fortune on your pills. The cost of keeping you alive is bleeding me dry. The words hung in the air, cold and brutal. The cost of keeping you alive is bleeding me dry. I had him. The recorder was capturing every syllable. I saw him realize what he'd said. His face went red, and he started to stammer. I mean, it's a lot of money in general, for any family. But I give you the money for them, Franklin, I said, my voice soft. My money. From my account. It's not bleeding you dry at all. He was cornered. Look, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm stressed. This is a lot of pressure. I know, I said, backing off. I had what I needed. I'm sorry, son. I didn't mean to upset you. Let's eat. The rest of the dinner was tense. Franklin ate quickly, his eyes darting around the room. He was spooked. He made an excuse about an early meeting and was gone by 8:30. The moment the door closed, I retrieved the recorder. I sat in my armchair and played it back. The cost of keeping you alive is bleeding me dry. I saved the file. I backed it up to a small encrypted USB drive Preston had given me. I had him. The bastard was mine. I felt a surge of adrenaline, of power, that I hadn't felt in months. I had the confession. I called Preston. I got it, I said, my voice triumphant. I got him, Preston, word for word. Good. Preston's voice was a calming anchor. Bring it to my office, first thing in the morning. Don't leave it lying around. And Alistair, don't do anything else. Don't worry, I said. I've got this. I hung up, but I was still buzzing. I had the confession. But Preston's words from earlier echoed in my head. We need to know where he gets them. Franklin had been so jumpy. He was clearly getting them from a shady source. During one of his earlier pre-heart attack rants about a new business idea, he had mentioned a revolutionary online pharmacy. It's the future, Dad, he'd said, cutting out the middleman. Apex Online Meds. They source directly from manufacturers. It's all about arbitrage. It was probably another one of his delusions, but now, I wondered. I went to my computer. I still had the new, real medications from the Summit Crest Pharmacy in my system. My mind was clearer. I typed in Apex Online Meds. The website was slick, professional. It advertised deep discounts on all major prescriptions. No prescription? No problem. This was it. This had to be it. I saw a Contact Us page. It listed a business address in a corporate park north of the city. I wasn't going to wait for Preston. I wasn't going to wait for the DA. I was a doctor, and this was an infection. I was going to find the source. The next morning, I didn't go to Preston's office. I drove to the address for Apex Online Meds. I had the encrypted USB with the recording in my pocket. I'd drop it off with Preston after. The corporate park was a series of rundown, single-story brick buildings. I found the suite number, 104. The door was unmarked. The glass was frosted and dirty. I tried the knob. It was locked. I knocked. Hello, Apex Meds? Nothing. I peered through a grimy spot on the window. The office was empty. Not just empty, but abandoned. Dust motes danced in the single shaft of light. A few discarded pieces of junk mail were on the floor. A man in a mechanic's jumpsuit was walking by, carrying a tire. Excuse me, I called out. I'm looking for the business in Suite 104. He barely slowed down. That place? Been empty for a year. Some tech scam, took a bunch of people's money and vanished. A tech scam. A defunct website. My blood ran cold. This was a dead end. A total, complete waste of time. I suddenly felt dizzy. I hadn't taken my real pills this morning. In my rush, I'd forgotten. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the familiar, crushing fatigue. I stumbled back to my car. my heart doing a frantic, painful tap dance in my chest. I'd wasted a whole day. I'd blown off Preston, and I was no closer to finding the real source. Franklin was smarter than this. Apex Online Meds was just another one of his smokescreens. A story he'd fed me months ago. A false trail. I fumbled for the bottle of real digoxin I had in the glove compartment. I dry swallowed a pill, gasping. I had failed. The rage I felt was no longer at Franklin. It was at myself. I had been a fool. I had to get the recording to Preston. Now. I drove straight to Preston's office, my hands shaking on the wheel. I felt weak, foolish, and sick. "Where the hell were you?" Preston barked when I walked in, bypassing his secretary. "I've been calling you all morning." I had a false lead," I said, sinking into the chair opposite his desk. I explained my idiotic trip to the abandoned office. Preston rubbed his temples. "Alistair, you are a doctor, not a detective. You got the confession. That is the ball game. Now give me the drive." I reached into my coat pocket. It was empty. "No," I said, my voice a whisper. "No, what?" Preston snapped. "It's not here." I stood up, frantically patting down all my pockets, my suit jacket, my trousers. "It's not here. It must have fallen out." "Alistair, think!" Preston gripped my shoulders. "Where is it? Where's the recorder?" "The recorder, I left it at home," I said, my mind racing. "On my desk. I was going to bring it too, but I just brought the USB drive. Or I thought I did." "Go home," Preston commanded. "Find the recorder. Find the drive. Call me the second. You have either one in your hand? And Alistair, do not, under any circumstances, leave your apartment again." I raced home, my panic mounting. I'd had the drive in my pocket when I left the house. I knew I had. Had it fallen out in the car? At the abandoned office? I pulled into my condo's parking garage, my tires squealing. I ran to the elevator, my heart protesting, pounding against my ribs. I burst into my apartment. "Come on, come on!" The front door was ajar, just slightly, a crack. I never leave my door ajar. I pushed it open slowly. My apartment was destroyed. It wasn't a neat, professional burglary. It was a ransacking. Couch cushions were slashed. Books were swept from shelves. My mattress was overturned. They had been looking for something specific. I ran into my study. My desk was cleared. My laptop was gone. My files were scattered. And the small silver digital recorder I had left by my monitor was gone. The encrypted USB drive, also gone. I stumbled back, my hand on my chest. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't a random break-in. Franklin had been here. Or he'd sent someone. He knew I'd recorded him. My questions about the receipts, my sudden dinner party. I had overplayed my hand. He had gotten spooked. I had lost everything. The confession, the recording, my only proof. I was back to square one. Only now my enemy knew I was hunting him, and I was still taking fake pills, because the real ones from Desmond were almost gone. I was out of time. I had no evidence, and my son was trying to murder me faster than ever. I sat in the wreckage of my study for an hour. The police had come. They were polite, took a report, and left. "Looks like kids, Dr. Knight," the officer had said. "Looking for small electronics, laptops, phones, easy to pawn." I hadn't told him about the recorder. I was alone. I had no proof. Preston couldn't help me without it. The law couldn't help me. And Franklin would be back. Not himself, but he would find a way. The next batch of pills would be laced with something. Not just missing something. Or he'd hire someone to finish the job the burglars had started. I was a 71-year-old man, and I was going to be murdered by my own son. Unless. I picked up the phone. I bypassed Preston. I bypassed the local police. I called a number I hadn't dialed in 10 years. Georgia Bureau of Investigation Forensics. A crisp voice answered. Dr. Lorelei Spencer, I said. Please. There was a pause. May I ask who is calling? Alistair Knight. Another pause. Dr. Spencer had been my most brilliant, most ruthless, and most difficult student. She saw the world as a series of chemical equations to be solved. She'd left the medical field for forensics, saying it was more honest. Alistair. Her voice came on the line, sharp and unchanged. I assumed you were dead, or at least retired. Not yet, Lorelei, I said, my voice gravel. But I'm working on it. What do you want? I need your help, I said, officially. I'm the victim of a crime. A very specific crime. What kind of crime? I looked at the last single fake pill I had saved from Jonas's analysis. Pharmaceutical counterfeiting. Attempted murder. Mine. There was a long silence on the line. I could hear her breathing. My lab, she said. 1 hour. She hung up. I grabbed the pill, the last piece of evidence in the world, and walked out the door. The GBI lab was a world away from the sterile comfort of a hospital. It was a place of cold, hard function. Steel, glass, and the smell of ozone. Lorelei Spencer hadn't aged a day. She was still whip-thin, with her hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful, and eyes that missed nothing. She wore a lab coat, but it looked more like armor. She didn't shake my hand. She pointed to a metal tray. Put the sample on the tray, and your phone. Lorelei, On the tray, Alistair. This is my lab, my rules. We're on the record. I did as I was told. She picked up the single white pill with a pair of tweezers and placed it in a sealed vial. Sit, she commanded, pointing to a stool. Tell me. So I did. I told her everything. Desmond's suspicion. Jonas's off-the-books analysis. The tampered boxes. The fake pills. The recorder. The trap dinner. The break-in. The missing evidence. I left out one thing. I never said Franklin's name. I just said a family member. She listened, her face impassive. When I was finished, she just stared at me. You're an idiot, Alistair, she said. A sentimental, arrogant idiot. You played spy and got burned. You should have come to me the second you suspected. You're right, I said, my voice hollow. Can you help me? Help you? She laughed, a short, sharp bark. I'm a forensic chemist. I don't help people. I find facts. You've given me one pill. What do you expect me to do with it? Find out where it came from, I said. Jonas said it was professional grade. That means a source, a manufacturer. You find the source. You find the person who bought it. She looked at the pill in its vial, a small flicker of interest in her eyes. The puzzle. This will take time, she said, picking up the vial. A mass spec will tell me what it is. But to find out who made it, I need to analyze the binding agents, the fillers, the specific chalk-to-starch ratio. That's a signature, like a fingerprint. How long? Don't ask me how long, she snapped. I'll call you. She turned and walked into her inner lab, the door hissing shut behind her. I waited for 3 days. 3 days of replacing my door, of cleaning up the wreckage of my apartment, of pretending to be a victim of a simple robbery. Preston was furious. You went to the GBI, to Spencer. Alistair, she's a shark. You've unleashed a monster. I've unleashed my only hope, I said. On the 4th day, my phone rang. It was Lorelei. My office, now. I was there in 20 minutes. She had a single sheet of paper on her desk. Your pill is interesting, she said, without preamble. Interesting. The binding agent is a specific copolymer blend, almost exclusively used as an excipient in Eastern European pharmaceuticals. And the chalk, it's not pharmaceutical grade. It's high-end, treated industrial talc. Very specific mineral trace. She tapped the paper. There are only 2 labs in the state that have ever been flagged for using this combination. One was shut down by the feds 2 years ago. The other... She slid the paper across the desk. It was a name and an address. Mortimer Morty Shank, she said. A pharmaceutical chemist who lost his license for, wait for it, selling adulterated chemotherapy drugs. He runs a supplement business out of a warehouse in South Augusta. You found him, I breathed. You found the source. I found a source, she corrected. Now we find out if he's your source. And to do that, we need to get out of my lab. What are we doing? Lorelei grabbed a jacket. We're going to pay Mr. Shank a visit. And Alistair, you're going to let me do all the talking. You're just my grieving consultant who lost a relative to fake drugs. Try to look sad. That, I said, my voice like ice, won't be a problem. The warehouse was in a part of town where the train tracks were the most well-maintained feature. The air smelled like diesel and spoiled cabbage. Mortimer Shank Supplements read a peeling sign on a roll-up metal door. Lorelei didn't knock. She banged on the metal door with her fist. GBI, open up, Mr. Shank! There was a scuttling sound from inside, then the sound of several heavy locks being undone. The door rolled up a few feet, revealing a short, paunchy man in a stained t-shirt and safety goggles. What? What is this? He stammered, his eyes wide with panic. Lorelei flashed her badge so fast he barely saw it. Dr. Spencer, GBI Forensics. You're Mortimer Shank? Yeah, but I just make vitamins. Herbal supplements. Save it, Lorelei said, pushing past him into the dim warehouse. I followed close behind. The place was a nightmare. Dusty, disorganized, but in the back corner, under a single bright work light, was a pristine, industrial-grade tablet press. Next to it were open bags of talc, cornstarch, and various chemical drums. This is a very impressive setup for vitamins, Mr. Shank, Lorelei said, walking over to the press. This is a Manistee D series. Good for 20,000 tablets an hour. Where'd you get it? It was an auction, Shank stammered, wringing his hands. Look, I don't want any trouble. Then don't lie to me. Lorelei picked up a small scoop. This copolymer blend, this industrial talc, that's your signature, isn't it? Your special recipe for placebo. Shank turned white. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Lorelei snapped. Because I have a sample of your work. A perfect little white pill. A digoxin replica. Sold to a man, a heart patient. He's dead now. She had lied. I wasn't dead. But the lie worked. Oh, God, Shank whispered, collapsing onto a stool. I told him it was dangerous. I told him not to. Told who? Lorelei was on him, her voice like a scalpel. The kid. The rich kid. He kept coming back. Paying cash. Always cash. My heart stopped. What kid? Lorelei asked, her voice calm. I don't know his name. Drove a new BMW. Always wore expensive clothes. He said it was for his father. He said his dad was a hypochondriac and he was just trying to wean him off the meds. He told you it was for his father? I said, my voice a broken rasp. Shank looked at me, seeing me for the first time. Yeah, he said, the old man is worth more to me dead than alive. He laughed. He thought it was a joke. Franklin. Lorelei nodded, her face grim. We're going to need a statement, Mr. Shank. A full, detailed statement. And in return? What? Shank asked, his eyes desperate. In return, you testify against the rich kid, and maybe the DA will take your cooperation into account when they're sentencing you for, well, everything. Shank nodded frantically. Yes, yes, anything. I'll tell you everything. We walked out of the warehouse into the blinding afternoon sun. Now what? I asked. Now, Lorelei said, pulling out her phone. We hand this to someone who can use it. We've got the what and the where. Now we get the arrest. She dialed a number. Raymond, it's Lorelei Spencer. I've got a gift for you. A real high-profile attempted murder case, gift-wrapped. Meet me at your office and bring your best suit. This one's going to make the news. She looked at me. Assistant DA Raymond Groves, another one of your old students, if I recall. He was, I said. He was top of his class in medical ethics. Good, Lorelei said, a grim smile touching her lips. Let's see if he remembers what you taught him. Raymond Groves was exactly as I remembered him. Sharp, impeccably dressed, and ambitious. His office at the DA's building was even bigger than Preston's. He listened to the entire story without interrupting. Lorelei laid out the forensics. I told him about the break-in, the missing recorder, and the motive. He looked at the sworn, signed affidavit from Mortimer Shank. When we were finished, he steepled his fingers and looked at me. His eyes weren't those of a former student. They were the eyes of a prosecutor. Dr. Knight, he said, his voice measured. This is an extraordinary accusation. You are asking me to arrest your only son for your attempted murder, based on the word of a known criminal and a chain of circumstantial evidence. It's not circumstantial, Lorelei snapped. The pills in Alistair's cabinet match the pills in Shank's warehouse. Shank identifies the buyer as a man matching Franklin Knight's description, who said he was buying them for his old man. It's a straight line. It's a good line, Dr. Spencer, Raymond agreed. But Franklin's lawyer will say Shank is just a desperate man trying to save his own skin, pointing his finger at the first rich name he can think of. What we're missing is a direct, unbreakable link. So what? I demanded. We just let him win. No, Raymond said, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. We don't. We just need to be smarter. He picked up his phone. Get me a warrant for the financial records of Franklin Knight. All of them. Bank accounts, credit cards, wire transfers, and get me a trace on his cell phone. I want to know where he was at the time of the break-in at Dr. Knight's condo. He turned to me. Shank said he paid in cash. Your son has no job, no real income. Where did he get thousands of dollars in cash to pay Shank month after month? I knew the answer. He was siphoning it from me. He still had access to a joint business account I'd set up for him years ago. I forgot about it. There it is, Raymond said, his eyes lighting up. We traced the withdrawals. Cash withdrawals, just before he meets Shank. We put his cell phone at Shank's warehouse. We put his cell phone near your condo during the break-in. We build a cage, Dr. Knight. A cage of data so tight that he can't escape. It took the DA's office 48 hours. They were the longest 2 days of my life. I stayed at a hotel under guard. I was taking my real life-saving medication, and with every dose, I felt my body grow stronger and my resolve harden. The call came at 6:15 a.m. on a Friday. It was Raymond. "We've got him," he said. The bank records matched the timeline Shank gave us. Large cash withdrawals, always within 24 hours of the meetings. And his cell phone? It pinged a tower less than half a mile from your condo 10 minutes after the break-in. He wasn't at the break-in. He was waiting for the call to say it was done. He's sloppy. He's arrogant. And he's going down. When? I asked. The arrest warrant was just signed by the judge, Raymond said. The team is moving in now. My own phone rang almost immediately. I looked at the caller ID. Franklin. I looked at Raymond. He nodded. Answer it. Put it on speaker. This is all being recorded. I answered the call, and I heard my son, not as a man, but as a cornered animal. Dad, Dad, you have to help me. He was screaming. I could hear shouting in the background, muffled commands. The police are here. They're banging on my door. They're arresting me. They're saying I tried to kill you. I could hear the fear, the panic, the sheer, unadulterated terror. He wasn't a criminal mastermind. He was a greedy, stupid child who had been caught. Dad, this is insane. It's a misunderstanding. You have to call Preston. You have to call your lawyer. Fix this, Dad. Fix this. He was still doing it. After everything. He was still expecting me to fix his problems, to bail him out. I sat in the sterile light of the DA's office, my hand steady, my heart beating a strong, regular rhythm. No, Franklin, I said. My voice was cold steel. The line went silent. The shouting in the background stopped. I could hear his breathing, ragged and desperate. What? What did you say? I said no, I repeated. I can't help you. This is not a misunderstanding. I heard a click as the phone was taken from his hand. Dr. Knight? A new voice said. This is Detective Miller, Augusta PD. We have your son in custody. We're on our way to the precinct. I hung up the phone. Raymond Groves was watching me, his expression unreadable. You're a strong man, Dr. Knight, he said. No, I said, standing up. I was a weak one. That's why we're here. Now. When do you need me to testify? The trial began 4 months later. 4 months of legal maneuvering, of Franklin's expensive lawyer, a shark named Jameson, trying to get the case dismissed. It didn't work. The evidence was too strong. The courtroom was packed. Every doctor, nurse, and administrator I had ever trained or worked with seemed to be there. The media was in a frenzy. Prominent doctor's son tries to kill father for inheritance. I walked into that courtroom, not as a patient, but as a witness. My health was fully restored. I was taking my real medication. I felt strong. I sat in the front row. And then they brought him in. Franklin. He was wearing an ill-fitting suit, his hair unkempt. He looked thin, terrified. He made eye contact with me, his eyes pleading. Fix this. I looked away. The prosecution, led by a sharp woman named Angus Marlowe, began. She was methodical, precise. She painted a picture of a dedicated father, a pillar of the community, and a greedy, parasitic son. Then Jameson, Franklin's lawyer, stood up. His voice was smooth, like poisoned honey. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he began. We are not here to dispute that Dr. Knight is a great man, a hero. But even heroes grow old. Even the sharpest minds can dull. He turned and pointed at me. The defense will show that Alistair Knight, a 71-year-old man, a recent and severe cardiac patient, is confused. He is paranoid. He has tragically, mistakenly accused his own son, the very man who was trying to help him, of a crime that never happened. He was painting me as senile, a deluded old fool. My client, Franklin Knight, Jameson continued, is the victim here. The victim of a pharmaceutical scam, yes, but also the victim of his own father's tragic mental decline. I gripped the railing in front of me. I wanted to stand up and shout, but I held my ground. Marlowe, the prosecutor, just smiled. An interesting theory, counsel. Let's see if it survives our first witness. The prosecution calls Dr. Desmond Hale to the stand. Desmond walked to the stand, a picture of calm, medical authority. Marlowe. Dr. Hale, you were Dr. Knight's primary cardiologist after his heart attack. In your expert opinion, what was his mental state? Hale. Sharp as a tack. He's a doctor. He was more on top of his case than most of my patients. He was, however, physically deteriorating at an alarming rate. Marlowe. Why? Hale. Because he was not receiving his medication. His symptoms were consistent with a patient in total noncompliance. Jameson, on cross-examination, tried to rattle him. So he was noncompliant. He wasn't taking his pills. Hale didn't blink. No, his symptoms were consistent with it. But I believed him when he said he was, which is why I sent him to the hospital pharmacy for a new batch. His symptoms reversed, dramatically, within 48 hours. He wasn't non-compliant. The pills he was being given were fake. The next witness was Jonas Calloway. He explained in agonizing detail the results of his mass spectrometer test. Chalk, starch, and binder. 0 active ingredients. Jameson tried to paint him as a loyal-to-a-fault former student. You did this test off the books, didn't you? You broke hospital protocol to help your old mentor. Jonas. I broke protocol to save a man's life, and the results are the results. The pills were poison by omission. Then Lorelei Spencer took the stand. She was devastating. She was all facts. Cold, hard, and unbreakable. She presented the chemical fingerprint of the pills from my cabinet. She showed how it was a 1-to-1 match with the signature of the pills from Mortimer Shank's lab. Marlowe. Dr. Spencer, in your expert opinion, is it possible these pills came from different sources? Lorelei. No. The specific copolymer blend, the trace minerals in the talc. The odds are astronomical, like finding 2 identical snowflakes. They were made by the same person, on the same machine, from the same batch of raw materials. Then, they brought in Mortimer Shank. He was a bundle of nerves, but he was a man who had made a deal. He identified Franklin in the courtroom. Shank. That's him. That's the rich kid. He came every month, paid cash, told me it was for his old man, laughed about him dying. Jameson's cross-examination was brutal. You're a criminal. You're lying to save your own skin. Shank. I am a criminal, but I'm not a murderer. I'm not the one who took my pills and gave them to a heart patient. He is. He pointed straight at Franklin. Finally, Raymond Groves's team presented the data. The cell phone pings, the cash withdrawals, matching Shank's timeline perfectly. The cell tower data from Franklin's phone, placing him half a mile from my condo, 10 minutes after the break-in, waiting for the all-clear. The cage was built, and Franklin was inside it. It was my turn to testify. I told them everything. About the money, the lies, the dinner, the break-in. Jameson came at me hard. Dr. Knight, you're a rich man. You're a controlling man. Isn't it true you held your money over your son's head his entire life? Isn't it true that when he finally tried to show some independence, you cut him off? My son is 43 years old, I said, my voice resonating in the silent courtroom. His independence was a series of failed businesses that cost me millions of dollars. When I had a heart attack, I could no longer fund his failures. That is when he offered to manage my medication. "You hate him, don't you?" Jameson shouted. "This is all just a tough love lesson gone wrong." "I don't hate my son," I said. "I'm not even sure who he is, but I know that for 3 months he brought me fake pills and watched me die. That is not tough love. That is attempted murder." The trial was over. Marlo was giving her closing argument. Franklin sat at the table, his head in his hands. He knew he was beaten. Then, just as the judge was about to dismiss the jury, Franklin leaped to his feet. "Dad!" he screamed. The entire courtroom flinched. "Dad, forgive me, please. I didn't mean it. It was a stupid mistake. A crazy idea. It went too far." He turned to the judge. "Don't let them do this. He's my father. Dad, tell them. Tell them to drop the charges, please." The bailiffs moved in, but the judge waved them off. All eyes turned to me. I stood up slowly. I walked to the wooden railing that separated the gallery from the court. I was 10 feet from him. His face was a mess of tears and snot. He was the 5-year-old boy who had scraped his knee. "For 45 years, I said, my voice clear and cold, "I dedicated my life to saving lives. You dedicated 3 months to trying to take mine." I looked at the jury. Let the court decide what to do with that. I turned to walk away, and the mask of the penitent child shattered. "You monster!" he shrieked, his voice cracking with a rage so pure it was terrifying. "You're a monster! You controlled me! You controlled me my whole life with your money! You were always a tyrant! You never let me be free!" "Order!" The judge banged his gavel. "Order in the court!" "I hate you!" Franklin screamed, lunging against his lawyer, who was trying to hold him back. "I wish you had died from the heart attack. The money is mine. It's my right. I'm your only heir. It's mine." The courtroom was dead silent. The jury stared, mouths open. Franklin had just signed his own death warrant. He had shown them his true face, a man who didn't see a father, but an obstacle, an inheritance he felt entitled to. The bailiffs dragged him, screaming and sobbing, from the courtroom. I sat down. I did not look back. The jury was out for 45 minutes. Guilty on all counts. The judge was not lenient. "Mr. Knight, you are a parasite who, in an act of profound and disturbing greed, tried to murder the very man who gave you life. You are a disgrace to your name and to humanity. 12 years, the maximum." The trial was over. Franklin was gone. My condo, once a home, felt like a museum of a life that was over. The pictures of Franklin as a boy, of Clarissa and me with our happy, perfect son, it was all a lie. For the first few weeks, I was adrift. I was healthy, but I was empty. The man I had spent my life working for, saving for, was a monster of my own creation. Then, I got a call. It was the dean of Evergreen University. "Alistair," he said, "we've been following the news. It's a terrible tragedy." "It is," I said, waiting. "We have a situation. Our medical ethics professor just retired, unexpectedly. The semester starts in 2 weeks. I know it's a long shot, but would you consider filling in?" Teaching. I hadn't been in a lecture hall in 20 years. "Yes," I said, before I could talk myself out of it. "Yes, I would." I walked into that lecture hall on the first day, my hands shaking. 150 bright young faces stared back at me, all of them knowing who I was. All of them had read the headlines. I walked to the podium. I threw my prepared notes on the floor. "Good morning," I said. "My name is Alistair Knight, and we are not going to talk about theory. We are going to talk about what happens when you forget why you became a doctor." I taught them about the difference between a paycheck and a purpose. I told them that medicine is not a business. It's a privilege. I told them that the moment you see a patient as a number, or a problem, or a cost, you have failed. I told them everything, except his name. At the end of the semester, I got a standing ovation. I had found my new purpose, but it wasn't enough. I called my notary, Eleanor DuPont. She was an old friend of Clarissa's. "Alistair, good to see you," she said, ushering me into her plush office. "I assume you're here to update your will. Now that, well..." "Yes," I said. "I'm here to change everything. My son, Franklin Knight, is to be explicitly and totally disinherited. He is not to receive 1 cent, not a photograph, nothing." Eleanor nodded, taking notes. "And the estate, it's significant. It goes to..." "It's all going to Evergreen University," I said. She paused, her pen in the air. "All of it? The condo, the investments?" "Alistair, that's over $10 million. "I know," I said. "And I don't want it. I want it to work." "I'm not just giving them the money, Eleanor," I explained. "I'm creating a new legacy." We worked for 2 months on the legal framework. It wasn't just a donation. It was a weapon, a targeted instrument. The Clarissa Knight Endowment was born. It was a perpetual scholarship fund. But it had rules. My rules. It was not for the children of other doctors or lawyers, or for the kids with perfect SAT scores who were going to get in anyway. It was for the ones who had no business applying. The kids from South Augusta. The children of immigrants, of single mothers, of laborers. The ones who had the grades, the hunger, the fire, but not a penny to their name. The scholarship would cover everything. Tuition, books, housing, a stipend for food. It would take money completely off the table, so they could focus on one thing: becoming the best damn doctors they could be. The first award ceremony was a year later. I stood on the stage of the university auditorium. I had 20 young, terrified, brilliant students in front of me. There was Maya Jordan, the daughter of a woman who cleaned houses in my own condo building. She wanted to be a pediatrician. There was David Wallace, a young man who had worked as an orderly to put himself through community college. He wanted to be a trauma surgeon. I handed each of them the letter. I shook their hands. "You're not just getting a scholarship," I told Maya, her hands shaking as she took the envelope. "You're carrying on a legacy, Clarissa's legacy, my legacy. Make it count." "Sir, Dr. Knight," she said, tears in her eyes, I won't let you down." "I know you won't," I said. "Now go. You have a lot of studying to do." I started a new tradition. Once a month, I took my students out to dinner. We'd talk about cases, about ethics, about life. They became my family. They sent me pictures from their first day in the ER. They invited me to their weddings. They argued with me about new medical techniques. They were my children, all 150 of them. Years passed. I taught. I mentored. I watched my endowment grow. The Clarissa Knight Endowment had, by 2025, funded the education of over 300 doctors. Doctors who were now working in rural communities, in inner-city hospitals, in clinics overseas. My money, the money Franklin had tried to kill me for, was saving thousands of lives every single day. I received letters from prison. The first few were full of rage, curses, threats. "You'll pay for this, old man." The next batch, years later, were full of manipulative pity. "I've changed, Dad. I found God. The other inmates say you're cruel to keep me here." The last one came in 2024. He was up for parole. "I'd like us to talk." I put it with the others, in a box, unanswered. I was 84 years old. My heart, the one that had been so cruelly betrayed, was finally, naturally, wearing out. Desmond Hale, now the chief of cardiology at Summit Crest, sat by my bedside in my condo. "We can do more procedures, Alistair," he said, his voice thick. "We can try a new valve." "No, Desmond," I said. My voice was weak, but my mind was clear. "You've given me 13 more years than I should have had. That's enough." I was ready. I died in my own bed on a Tuesday in March. I wasn't alone. I was surrounded by my family. Dr. Maya Jordan, the pediatrician, was holding one hand. Dr. David Wallace, the trauma surgeon, was holding the other. Lorelei and Jonas were there. Preston was in the corner, trying not to cry. My room was filled with the people whose lives I had touched. My legacy was secure. I was buried next to Clarissa. The funeral was loud. Hundreds of my kids, my doctors, came. They told stories, they laughed, they cried. Franklin was not there. He had been released, I heard. He had tried to contest the will. He failed. My entire estate, my condo, my art, my last dime, went into the endowment. If you are listening to this, my friend, understand this. We are not defined by the blood in our veins, but by the purpose in our hearts. True family is not what you are given. It's what you build. Franklin wanted my money. He ended up with nothing. I wanted a legacy, and I got one. It's out there right now in 100 hospitals, wearing a white coat and saving a life. And it will continue to do so, long after my name is forgotten. That is the only justice that matters. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.